All right. Item 12, new business for possible board action. A, election. 1, possible action regarding consideration and approval of an order calling a bond election to be held by Northeast Independent School District, making provisions for the conduct of a joint election and resolving other matters incident and related to such election. Before we get started, we have some folks signed up to speak on this agenda item, so we'll go ahead and do those now.
Number 6.
Good evening. Is it on?
I think so.
Good evening. My name is John Melendez, and I'm speaking tonight in a personal capacity as a proud parent, husband, and taxpayer living in this district. I'm here because I'm deeply concerned about the proposed $495 million bond election. Let's be clear, this isn't free money. It's a loan, one that we, the taxpayers, will have to repay with interest. And while some borrowing may be necessary, we must ask, of the more than 270 projects included in this proposal, are they all truly essential? Have you examined each project's purpose and cost? Can you honestly say each one is a must-have rather than a nice-to-have? Before asking voters to approve nearly $500 million in new debt, we owe it to the community to ensure that we're funding needs, not luxuries. Let's not forget NEISD taxpayers are already responsible for over $1 billion in bond debt accumulated over the past 20 years. If there isn't a clear plan to pay that down, how can we justify taking on even more? Taxpayers are not a bottomless piggy bank. Transparency is also a major concern. Today is the first day of school, and yet this bond election decision is moving forward without meaningful public notice. There's been no direct communication to taxpayers and no open dialogue. The only information that is shared is quietly put online without any proactive steps taken to engage the public. And it is the public that is being blindsided by a decision with enormous financial consequences. And secrecy has legal consequences too. In Hays County, a court voided a $440 million bond because officials failed to comply with the Texas Open Meetings Act. They didn't properly disclose bond details in their agenda. The result, the election was erased as if it never happened. To avoid that kind of outcome and to restore trust, every future bond proposal should include advance notice to every taxpayer, clear detailed meeting agendas, genuine opportunities for public input, straightforward ballot language stating the amount, purpose, and tax impact without ambiguity, a binding guarantee that funds are spent exactly as promised, because if this bond is approved in November, there's a real risk that taxpayers will lose all control over how the money is ultimately used. So I urge you, do not rush this, do not bypass public scrutiny. Let's take the time to get this right before putting our community even deeper into debt. Thank you.
Thank you.
Number 7.
Test. Okay. Good evening, board members and executive directors. I know you hear this a lot. You hear a lot, thank you for all that you do. However, I do want to thank you from the bottom of my heart for all the time you spent doing what you do. We served on boards before, and we know all it takes to do what you do. The proposed bond includes $19.8 million in new Chromebooks for all schools except for the alternate schools. The $145,000 for Chromebooks for the alternative schools was not selected and is not part of the bond. Those students are there for one reason or another. However, they deserve the same access to education as the main campuses, and their current Chromebooks are already outdated. Approving them for the rest of the schools and not the alternative school is not providing them with the same tools. I know how difficult it can be for students to access resources and assignments from their home campuses, including counseling online. And having all Chromebooks is part of the problem. I encourage you to pay a visit yourselves to see it by firsthand and hear it from the students themselves. Dr. Micah had a great point when he mentioned the importance to keep up with maintenance in a regular basis to keep things up and running in order to provide a safe environment for our students, teachers, and staff members. Thank you. Ms. Shelton had a great point about the Chromebooks not selected for alternative schools and a great question about the earpiece for the teachers. If $4.4 million are to be spent on teachers' voice amplification systems, there should be a policy for those systems to be used, not just store them away. Otherwise, it will be wasteful spending as there is no consistency in the use of them. NEISD is a great district and has great policies. However, there is always room for improvement, and we really need to improve on enforcing the policies, consistency, and accountability. Once we achieve that, we can be the powerhouse district and great example for other districts to follow. Thank you again.
Thank you.
Number 8.
Good evening, board members and executive staff. I'm following others who have talked about policies and accountability, and as you're looking at the bond, I want to look at it through that lens. More specifically, I had an opportunity to listen to the meeting last week where you talked about some of the items included in the bond. One of them that caught my attention was the conversation that you had back and forth regarding the lighting system. $5.8 million for exterior building and parking lot lighting and the security and under the security and safety. I thought it was great. It's your job to ask those questions, but I felt uncomfortable because the answer that was given was not complete. I understood very well because we live close to a school and we know that those lights, they may be great, but if they're off, they're not doing anybody any service. So as you look at those items, it is your responsibility as well to not only ask for the money and ensure that they are completed, but have the policies and procedures in place so that they are used the way that they should be used. As my previous speaker mentioned as well, yes, make sure that they are the right items that we do need, but also that once we get them, that they're used appropriately so that they benefit the community. Again, I'm still concerned about the lights, and I'm hoping that they are on because it is a safety issue for those areas that are not illuminated at night. Thank you.
Thank you.
Number 9.
Hello again. I just wanted to say that I watch all the board meetings, and I've been watching this. We had a lot of discussion about bylaws for SHAC, but not quite as much talk among the board members and clarity on a huge bond that you want to call an election for. I just want to know if you're confident, because I'm not confident that you're confident that this is the right bond at the right time, the right amount. There were no notifications. Typically, board meetings are put onto Facebook to say, hey, there's a board meeting. But since the bond stuff has started, I think that has ended, but I may be wrong. That's what I noticed. I didn't notice town halls or anything like that. And I even filed a PIR for the board officers' texts, private messages, just to see if they're hearing from their community members, and there was like nothing. So I don't know what your constituents know. The board workshop had some interested parties here to speak, but they have an interest. You didn't hear from the taxpayers as well. When campaigning, your issues were mostly social in focus, but a few of you did make comments on finance, and I really liked what Trustee Shelton said at the time, candidate Shelton. You said we need to be good stewards of our resources, ensuring every dollar is spent wisely to support our students. And I appreciate that sentiment. I appreciate your asking good questions, and I hope that anytime you do ask good questions, you don't get shut down. You deserve the answers. They're all equal here. I just don't know if I'm confident that everything on this is needed. The way it was gone about, where an amount was given to each subcommittee and then basically a spending spree, fill it up until you get to that amount. That doesn't seem like the way a taxpayer would do it. If you owned a ranch and 2 beach houses and you couldn't pay your beach house because your I don't know, hurricane insurance kept going up, the right thing to do would be to sell the beach house, not go to your ranch and poach your neighbor's cows to pay for it, okay? So until I'm confident that you guys have done everything you can, you had 3 school closures, but they weren't actually closed. You've repurposed them. So yes, we may be saving a little bit, but the buildings weren't sold. You're still paying for operating, things. You also have a ton of schools that are very underutilized. And I haven't heard any conversation, and I hear that this is the last report you're going to have on school consolidation, and I'm thinking there's so much more work to do. So you have a lot of buildings that are underutilized, and I'm not seeing that hefty conversation at this level that we need. You have, if I read it correctly, I don't know if it was last year or this year, but a net of 10,000 students leaving this district for other public schools or charters. About 11,000 going out and about 1,000 coming in. We call ourselves a destination district, but I'm not sure. But I'll tell you what, parents don't leave the district because there's a little dink in the turf, or there's a little dink on the track, or a couple bleachers are loose. So
That's
we need
time.
Okay, that goes fast.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, Dr. Micah.
I'm going to turn it over to Ms. Caldwell for a minute.
Mr. President, members of the board, Dr. Micah, executive staff, and guests. The item tonight before you is for consideration of calling a bond election based off of the recommendations that the Facilities Steering Committee brought to you in a public meeting in June. As was mentioned, you had a board workshop on Monday to dive deeper into that recommendation made up of that community task force, that committee that you appointed members to, as well as Dr. Micah, who met for 6 months from December through June and heavily reviewed the Gordian data, our third-party consultant who had that impartial facilities review that you commissioned the year prior for 2003, 2004 when they analyzed our facilities. The greatest portion of what you're considering tonight, as you'll see in the election order, is for the maintenance of those projects as identified by Gordian. That is the largest percentage of the package that is before you for consideration. Dr. Micah?
Yeah, thank you, Ms. Caldwell. So, ladies and gentlemen, you've heard from some speakers tonight about wants and needs, right? Look, the way I look at this proposal is you all are the community. That's what you're voted on to represent. I see myself and my staff as property manager. We're coming to you as the property manager to say, folks, the property that you own, which I explained in the board workshop of a little over 12 million square feet, has some problems. And the community over decades have invested in these properties. They have chosen to say, we want these types of facilities. This is what we want. We're coming to you, and I said to Chief and I spoke actually afterwards, when Mr. Byer, I believe you asked him about, what projects in safety didn't get funded. I believe that was your question. And Chief McCampbell at the time said none, because they funded everything, because it wasn't about wants, it was about needs. When this was approached from the very get-go, when you look at HVAC and things like that in it, and again, I've heard lots of things of whether I should sell property or something. Folks, even if we sold the properties, you cannot access $500 million. It's just not there. When you own this much, and again, when my father-in-law passed away, my wife and I became property managers for their rentals. I saw what 30 years of my father-in-law being very frugal, because that's who he was. I loved him to death, great naval commander, but he did not believe in it, only for when my wife and I took them over to spend way more money than we should have because they had crumbled, because he refused to take them on. right? So now, in fact, my wife has gone off and on. I hope she's not listening, but she'll hear it anyway. Because at some point she had a very, she was upset that he left this type of an environment for us to take over. But that's just who he was, and we loved him for it. So when with what we're coming tonight, it isn't about, we're not building shiny new buildings, and we're not doing those types of things. I too am a homeowner, and I certainly don't want to be tearing stuff down. And I heard that actually from a member. I think she's in the audience. She said it very early on. I don't see her, but I thought I saw her earlier. Say, I want us to take care of buildings. I don't want to just be tearing them down. Well, we're not doing that. We're trying to make sure that things that our teachers and our staff and our parents expect, that when a child shows up in a building, that the air's on, that it's comfortable and it's a good and learning environment, that the teacher computers that are quite literally at the end of their life expectancy are replaced. We have gone a considerable amount of time, 10 years without doing it. We have funded projects along the way that we could afford. We're at that point now where you all, as the property owner, need to make a decision. But Ms. Shelton, I think you and I spoke about it. In the end, they're community schools. And the community needs to make a decision about what they want their schools to look like and how they want them to operate. Ultimately, the students are the community's students, and they're their buildings. And so I'm just coming simply tonight with a recommendation for this, because as the property manager, I'm telling you, you're about to see some problems. My staff and I have worked on it. Again, this was never hidden. We advertised it. We talked about facilities. We did talk about things along the way, because ultimately, it never started out as we're going to do a bond. It started out with, let's take a look at what we even need. Because up till that Gordian study that the board unanimously approved, we didn't even know we had 458 buildings, 240 portables, and 12 million square feet. Like, it really got us to wrap our hands around what do we own, what do we need to happen, and then let's just make sure we take care of things in the way that our community expects us. And that's ultimately where we reached this conclusion. And again, I'll thank the community members that did sit on our committee, because quite frankly, some of them didn't start out because I will tell you, Ms. Chidgey, one of them was from your SMD, who said they were not on board with it. But through that process, they really understood and said, this has to happen. Like, I get it now, right? And so ultimately, that's the recommendation this evening that we bring to you.
I think Ms. Landry, you had your light on.
Yes. So I have a couple of questions. Mr. Villarreal, of the debt that we have for the past 4 bonds from 2003, 7, 11, and 15, what's our remaining balance of those bonds?
Well, you'd have to go back also, because we had some outstanding debt that we refunded. So when you talk about 2003 and 2007, some of that has been refunded, but we have a little north of $1 billion.
Okay, and what was the total amount that we borrowed?
That we borrowed in
those bonds?
Oh, we've had different amounts. In 2015, we borrowed 499, I think, and then 2011 we borrowed like 493. But we've been paying it off. So the last 10 years, probably the last maybe 7 years, we paid off 240 extra than just making the regular payments that we've made. So I guess when you add it all up, I mean, we've never had more than $1.8 billion, but like I said, we've been paying it, so we're just north of $1 billion. I'm not sure as far as the total, because it's never really been, every year we pay on it. It's kind of like a mortgage. It's kind of, so you might have borrowed $493 million, but after 1 year you might have paid $50 million, or so, if I'm understanding your question.
Okay, so we're still in debt a little more than $1 billion.
Yes, ma'am. Yeah, I mean,
And-
they're capital expenditures that we make. Some of them are 20-year, 25-year, and 30-year. Technology, usually just do it over 5 years because technology is obsolete after 5 to 10 years. So we don't go 30 years on the technology portion. If you do HVACs, you might go 15 years. But like I said, the last few years we've done some variable rate financing and some fixed rate. We've gone 1 year, 2 years, 5 years. We're always looking at what the rates are doing so we can optimize what we have to pay back as far as interest. So it's not like a flat over 30 years, this is what we're going to pay. I mean, that's what we show, but if the rates come down or we get a better rate, we might refund it and just go out for 5 years to try to make the optimum of what the taxpayer has to pay back. So we try to work and be aggressive as far as not having to put that burden on.
Okay, and I just want to make sure I understand. I think last meeting, what you had told us was approximately 1.9 billion in those last 1.9 billion in the 4 bonds.
No, ma'am.
No?
No, well, I mean, if you add them all together, yeah, but we never, I mean, every
Not
4
in,
years.
in the individual bond.
Yeah, but it didn't add up to 1.9 because after 4 years, we already paid off some of the 493. And so, I mean, you're just adding to it. But if we wouldn't have made a payment, yeah, it would have been 1.8 billion, but it was never that much because we were paying as we go. Every year we pay in February and we have a payment in August.
Okay, and then the 1.2 billion is what I think you
Yeah,
said?
it's down to 1.1. We've done some refunding just a couple of weeks ago, so we saved some money there.
Okay, and so over 22 years, the total amount borrowed was 1.9. The total amount remaining is 1.1. So just shy of 900,000 is the total reduction.
That we paid? Yes,
Right.
ma'am. I mean, but when you go back to
900 million.
900 million.
900
but-
million, I'm
Not-
sorry, thank
yeah.
you.
But when you go back to 4 years, I mean, you're talking about bond issues in 80s, the 90s. I mean, we've had bond issues. I mean, you're going back for bond issues, but we've had bond issues since the district started back in 55. Because you got to remember, the state doesn't give you any money for capital outlay. We don't get any money. I mean, we get, your regular M&O to pay for, running the district. But if you want to build a building, so in the 2000s we had really big growth, Stone Oak area. Late 90s, 2000s, we built a lot of schools because we needed the capacity. But so anyway, the state the state doesn't give you any money to pay for buildings. They don't. It's incumbent upon, unfortunately, for the taxpayer to be able to pay for it.
Okay, and so the additional monies borrowed would put us approximately another 30 years for the 495 billion?
No, ma'am, because some of that, the technology, we probably would go out 5 years, less than 5 years, as far as the bonds that we sell. So when you look at it, everybody looks like at your mortgage, right? 30-year mortgage or 20-year mortgage or 15-year mortgage. But if this bond passes and we don't have to go to market for all 495 million, depending on how we start building or how much was needed, we can be strategic in using commercial paper, and then we can sell the bond. So that way we don't sell a bond the first day and start accumulating interest. I mean, we kind of go pay as you go. So we'll use commercial paper. So we have different tools that we can use as far as financing to make sure we don't just go out and sell 495 million for 30 years and then you be done with that. So it's kind of like refinancing a home mortgage if your rates come down, or you can fix it out if it's going to go up. So we do quite a bit of that.
And that's kind of the analogy that I'm thinking about as well. So Dr. Micah, you had mentioned that even if we sold property, there's no way we would get a sufficient amount to pay for the repairs and maintenance that we need, right?
No, ma'am.
So with that, are we upside down in our debt to net value ratio?
No, ma'am. No, I mean, we're a public entity, but as far as the debt that we have comparable, it's not as much a property that we own. We're not upside down at all.
Does that first report that we get
Yeah, the
every
first
year, what
report
is our
that you
score
get.
on that?
So preliminary, we have an A. So they look at our financial ratings and they take all that into account. They take your financing, your debt. They look at different things that we do, different markers in our finances. And, for the last 20-something years, we had A's. And I think this year we'll present that I think we're at 96 out of 100. So, yeah, they look at all that. So we're not upside down in any of our financials.
Okay. So, and I did receive a lot of calls and feedback from my community that are very, very concerned about the seemingly never-ending debt. And one of the repeating themes that I heard was, and we're all homeowners, nobody wants to rent their home once it's paid for from the state or the city or the school district. And I know my personal tax liability for the property taxes, 40% of that is school district. Now I know the CUP, and I know she's probably going to get mad at me for saying that. There she is.
She just walked in.
Miss Susie, I'm sorry. I know the CUP. But it is a concern. We do see that property values are increasing, but that also puts homeowners in a very tight spot, especially if you've owned your home for a while. And so this perpetual borrow money is, especially when there's no end in sight. And as you stated, there's no income from the state to manage and maintain the properties that we own. And so that was a lot of concern that I heard. We don't have payoff dates, and I know everything's variable and there's different categories and different rates. And I thank you for the lifetime or the life expectancy information on the electronics. And I was concerned that the 7 to 10 year life expectancy for those products, and then, as you stated, only a 5-year loan for those. So that makes me feel a little bit better. But ultimately, bottom line, with our current income, how many buildings can we afford to maintain? What of the 12 million square feet can we actually afford to keep maintenance on?
Well, I'm not sure what the question is. Are you talking about the financing component? Or are you talking about this bond issue or just future bond
I'm
issues?
not talking about the debt. I'm talking about the maintenance and operations. We have 12 million square feet. How much of that square feet, without borrowing additional funds, can we afford to maintain?
Oh, I see what you're saying. So, yeah, that's the M&O side. And we know when we talk about it in our budget study session, 87% is in people.
Right.
So that leaves 13% for supplies, for upkeep. We do give operations a budget. Custodial has a budget, maintenance, but not to we don't have the money to be able to replace a chiller. Say a chiller goes out for 2.4 mil, 2.6 mil. We might be able to do 1, 2, but if we have multiple ones, there's no way we can maintain without having to go borrow from the bank.
Right.
There's caps that you can do. You can do capital appreciation notes, but those
Mr.
are
Villarreal, the
expensive.
bottom line is to replace things.
Oh, yeah, no.
Right? We don't receive money for that.
Oh, no, no,
because
ma'am.
of that 13% that's left over after salaries, that is paying for electricity, insurance, buses, all those other things.
Diesel.
Right? That we're doing. And that was Mr. Villarreal's point earlier, is the bottom line is the state doesn't give us money for those types of things. They never have.
No.
Which is why you get into these cycles, because they've never provided that money for those capital projects to be done. They just never have. The formula funding has never been structured in such a way in order to address that.
Yeah, I've been doing it for 40 years. I used to audit school districts in the 80s. And, yeah, they've never, the districts have never received any monies from the state for capital improvement.
Okay, and so it's fair to say that we'll never be able to afford to maintain the resources that we have.
Do you mean on our, do you mean?
Ms. Shelton, Ms. Shelton, can you use your microphone, please?
I recognize the question wasn't to me. But do you mean, when you ask, will we never be able to afford them, is your question that we
We'll
won't
never
have
be
any revenue?
self-sufficient. We'll never be self-sufficient to afford to maintain the resources that we've purchased and built
With the money that we get from the state? Is that?
with any of the fundings we receive, outside of a bond. So the bond is the perpetual.
Funding source.
Correct.
I mean, in today's world, I think that's a fair assessment, unless something changes along the way. But again, my father-in-law, who I spoke about earlier, served on a board back in the 90s, and they had the same problem, and we used to talk about it, is that that's why school districts don't build schools without bonds, because there is no money to do it. And so that's why I say they're community schools. It just becomes about what that community wants, A, that building to look like, and B, how it operates. It's up to a community. It's really not up to us. We can, that's why we didn't come with wants. I'm uncomfortable with that. I'm even uncomfortable in that in my own house. You guys attended convocations where I talked about Vacation Sean. That's why my daughter liked him so much, because he was a lot more, because at home we live on budgets and things. We do that here as well. We don't spend money. They all know that I microscope everything that they're doing constantly. But some of these things are just never, the system of finance was never designed for school districts to be able to build buildings and then start replacing these huge expenses out of the budget that we get from the state of Texas. It's just not designed that way.
Okay, and so my last question is, with the statement that you made last week regarding the number of students that we anticipate having in the district, and the changes that are happening in reality, is it prudent for us to ask the community to continue to maintain all that we have, with the knowledge that we've, and y'all have done a really great job at coming through and recommending ways to tighten the belt and ways to pull back. It's just really, really difficult for me to sit here, having heard from community members, and from others speaking here tonight who are also community members. I don't want to separate y'all from that category, and realize that we may end up with debt with no resources, and our community is literally putting their houses on the line. And so I struggle with that. That's where I'm at.
My question, just, are you suggesting, because you seem to be focused on, well, we have 12 million square feet of, buildings and facilities and everything. I'm trying to understand, are you saying that we should shut down more, buildings?
One of our local leaders started something on city council, I think 2 years ago, with zero-based budgeting. And I think that is a good place to start. I don't have all the answers. I don't know what the answer is. I know that we are not, when I came into the meeting last week, I assumed, and I had always heard, that when we borrow money, we pay it off before we borrow more. And that's how I've always ran my financial management for my household. And to find out that we were still $1 billion in debt and asking for another 495 million. It really shocked me. And I really think there has to be a better answer.
Well, see, the problem is, what's the median age for all of our buildings? Because I know, how old are they?
So you may recall when Gordian presented to you, they presented two different things, renovation age and campus age. And many of our campuses enjoy a young renovation age because we have gone in previous bond programs and rebuilt aging, crumbling facilities. So in that presentation, Reagan High School cluster was the oldest of the campuses, and those, as a reminder, were built in the late 90s.
Okay. See, the problem is, I don't know if anybody's had an air conditioner go out on their home. It's a pretty dire, especially with 103, I've seen things go up to 112 here. And it becomes very expensive if you have something happen and something goes down because they've got you. And if you do the strike before, and that's why, Gordian was hired, is to prevent that, because we have more flexibility if we do go ahead and, say yes to this, submitting this bond. We have the opportunity to get ahead of it and perhaps buy things in mass that we wouldn't be able to do if we had one or two chillers go down. We would be hard pressed to be able to fix it. We would be in a situation where would we get the money to fix it?
Well, and I understand that. However, we are in a situation where will we get the money? We're still just north of $1 billion in debt from prior bonds.
I understand. It's horrifying, all right? But we have aging buildings, and the cheap could become very expensive. And if we just, I've seen districts that are around here that did not do what Dr. Micah, said with the money that we got from, what was that? ESSER's funds. He went ahead and used those ESSER funds to, make improvements. And so that saved us. But, those only went so far. And regretfully, we have aging buildings, we have issues, and the community ultimately will be the ones to speak in November if we decide to go ahead and move forward with this. But it's a question of, do you want your schools to be habitable by your kids, or do you want, are we taking chances keeping old equipment that's not serviceable? We have like the R22, you can't get that stuff. I mean, it's just, they deliberately make it so that they change that, that Freon, every few years, so that you have to change out your system. So, it's just, trust me, I'm cheap, right? I mean, you know it, and this is painful. But what's really painful is watching buildings deteriorate, and then we're in a situation where we have a catastrophic event, and now all of a sudden it's really expensive. And then we look back and we go, gee, I wish we would have done XYZ because we could have done a preemptive strike and kept this from happening.
Any more comments?
Yep, Mr. Byer, may I say something real quick? Mr. Villarreal, I'm going to go back to our budget study presentation in May and June, right? When we
Yes, sir.
look at tax rates across the area. Correct?
Yes, sir.
And, I mean,
Yeah.
we're one of the very lowest
Yes, sir.
taxing
Yeah. And
school
we've
districts
been
in
bringing
our
it
area.
down.
Correct.
The last 10 years, we've brought it down quite a bit. You know, it's been property value growth, but we, like I said, a lot of the lucky part was refinancing and refunding when the rates were really low. We were able to take some of those old debt and refinance it to a lower debt, and that's helped quite a bit. But yeah, right now we're at 30 cents, and we've been defeasing the last few years, so that's what we were kind of hoping to keep that rate and not have to pass any increases with this issue.
And you've, obviously, we've looked at this, that within our current rate,
Yes, sir.
we can, the 495
Yes, sir.
is within our capacity to
Yes, sir.
pay off.
And he said this once, but Mr. Villarreal, this is no tax increase, correct?
That is correct. Yes, sir.
And I get the comment about, you know, we continually, we feel like we're continually taxed, but at the same time, what's the other solution? I mean, we have a budget, and 600 million is a lot of money, a lot of money. 87% of that goes to people. We just heard from a speaker that we just cut their supply budgets again. We've cut district office down to the bone. We have 4 people that do payroll for 8,500 people. Those things move the needle, but they're not going to get us to replace chillers. You know, we have to find resources somewhere else. And can we do different things in budgeting? Absolutely. We have a shot every year to go through that, look at it, dig it through in detail. We know it's coming up in May. We know that we can ask for information to go line by line and look at that. And so, you know, $600 million is a lot, but when 13% of that is all we have left to replace a Chromebook, and we're not going to finance a Chromebook for 30 years.
No,
I mean,
sir.
that's the other thing I want to make sure we reiterate.
And just to clarify, we didn't cut campus budgets.
No,
We did not.
Correct. Sorry.
But the campuses, they allocate.
Have to
through-
allocate.
Right, through their own departmental stuff. But yeah,
Correct.
we didn't, just to clarify, we didn't cut any campus budgets.
Thank you for the clarification. Ms. Cox?
Yes, thank you. I just have two quick questions. One's really specific. Regarding the Chromebooks, I know we have money budgeted for that in the bond. And we have a one-to-one policy, I think, Mr. Jarrett, right, for the Chromes. So can we have those? I guess it's to the question that was there tonight. I'm worried about the alternative kids. And so is there, can we
We
just
don't
talk about
have
that?
necessarily a one-to-one policy. What we have is a one-to-one opportunity. So during the ESSER, we apply for grants. And we apply for grants so we wouldn't cost our taxpayers or our district any additional dollars. And so that's what afforded us more devices to carry throughout the district. And so what Ms. Ramsey did is went back and looked at all the years of each device and when they expire and different things like that of warranty. So even as we're talking about devices, it's not a lump sum, we're going to buy all these devices and it starts here, ends here. It's a strategic implementation plan, and then we leverage the devices that we have as well. So we want to stretch those as long as we possibly can. I think during the committee time, they just felt like this is where the dollar had to cut off, and they felt like we have, because a small number of devices needed alternative school, you can come up with alternate solutions, which we can, which is, again, if the student goes to alternative campus, we can come up with a strategy that the device follows the child, and then build redundancy to have additional devices at the school in case a child loses it or forgets it or whatever the case is. So we wouldn't let a child sit at alternative school and not have the resources that they deserve to have as well.
I think a week ago we discussed crafting a process or a policy, not a policy, a process that we would allow that to follow the student to alternative schools. I think we had already settled that, if I'm not mistaken.
Thank you very
Yeah,
much.
we Mr. Jarrett, Mr. Jimenez and I have met. We're we're going to do right by those students. That's part of the reason why we moved them locations as well, is to give them a better building and a better facility in which to go in. That was part of what we were trying to accomplish by that consolidation.
Okay, and just one other question. I'm sure we're going to push out a huge educational piece. Maybe that's when the forums happen, or some sort of time or moment or way that community questions can be addressed if this gets approved.
Sure. Yes. And Ms. Cox, one of the things, and Ms. Caldwell and I were talking about this today, and we were visiting about kind of some things in the past and so forth. Past bonds, oftentimes emotion came into it. And so emotion being that projects were picked not because they needed them, it was because they wanted them. And so you had this push-pull, because one of the things, and Ms. Chidgey, you were in a lot of these meetings, think about all the data and all of the things that were unpacked for that committee to understand the need, right? That was the pieces, even, and Ms. Caldwell, jump in if I'm saying anything incorrect here, please, is that the data was even masked by those campuses. To remove the emotional piece out of this is my building or in my area or whatever, it was about looking at the need regardless of where it's at. And so that's how it began and was utilized, because the moment you start putting school names on it, becomes emotional, becomes about what's in this. Because again, what we didn't want was to pick wants. We wanted to pick needs. That's ultimately what it is. Around the state of Texas, like there was a district just North Texas that just passed a $2 billion bond, folks, to build schools. Like it's massive. And again, I'm a taxpayer too, and I've watched my tax rate go up, but that's not because we've increased it. It's because my property value is increased. And I don't control that whatsoever. Bexar County Appraisal District controls it.
And clarify, your tax rate did not go up.
I'm sorry.
Your taxes went
up. Correct. Yes. Thank you, sir. Thank you for fact checking me. I appreciate it. But correct, my taxes went up. Our tax rate stayed the same. But I'm paying more in taxes because Bexar County Appraisal District has appraised my property more. Haven't done any improvements, haven't done anything, but that's just what's happening. And that's why back in 2019 when I took over, I'd actually asked Mr. Villarreal's department to take a look at what is the average property, and we continue to see that increase in our area, even though our tax rate's actually going down because of compression. So, that's that component that it's difficult, but again, that's kind of why it was built the way that it was. It's why we took a Gordian study. If you'll remember, I didn't want to hear what my own people thought. I wanted to hear from an outside source. Tell me what you see, and are we even seeing it right? So they came in as a third party to just look it all over for us and say, either we were correct in seeing it or we weren't correct. And then we use that data to kind of move forward and help those committee members that you all appointed on there unpack it and start to help them tell us. Does that make sense? Because ultimately it could have been nothing. They could have said, we don't recommend anything, correct?
Absolutely. There was a lot of conversation about, again, what was needed, what was urgent versus long-term, what was essential. For example, there's vinyl flooring that's running out of its life expectancy around the district. But when you compare vinyl flooring to a chiller, maybe not quite as urgent, right? And so the committee came to those discussions and those conclusions on their own. There was a lot of conversation about investment and about a dollar amount of what would be reasonable and what would not be reasonable. And there was conversation about the combination of, yes, asking the board to consider a bond election, but also considering selling property and then investing to knock off some projects off of the list. But you received an appraisal for a property that we're no longer using. That doesn't get you very far. If we were to sell that property, it maybe does a chiller replacement. It certainly is not going to do the scope, and the committee talked about that. The committee talked about the combination of decreasing square footage, decreasing portables, getting things off of our inventory to decrease the square footage and that cost, and how you can reinvest it for some projects, but certainly doesn't meet all of the more urgent needs that we have for the next 3 to 7 years.
Ms. Shelton, or Ms. Gigi, and then Ms. Shelton.
So I do want to reiterate, you mentioned that I was the board representative that attended every one of these meetings. And one of the folks that came forward said, "Are we looked at must-have versus nice-to-have?" And I just want to be clear that if it was a nice-to-have, it got cut. That committee was diligent at keeping it down and making it a must-have. A must-have meant it was an air conditioner, it was a roof, it was a safety issue. And the other thing I would like to say is, I love what Ms. Landry said. You pay off before you. The state has pretty much set us up so that we can't go 30 years without a bond issue. It would take 30 years to pay off one, and we can't go 30 years without that. It's pretty much been a system where you've gone 5 years, and if you look around the state, that's what the system is. We've gone 10 years. We've had huge inflation, and we still kept the amount down. The committee, it was very important to them to keep it down to a similar amount of the bond issue from 10 years ago, even with all of the inflation. So quite honestly, there were more things that I wanted on there, but I mean, I was just a witness to it. They were serious. It had to be a must-have, and they were going to keep it down to where it did not raise taxes. So I appreciated that committee. I can tell you that what they put on there are must-haves. I don't want to be the board that's on the news because our air conditioners or our heaters are out, as we've seen around the city. I want to take care of our children. That doesn't mean we're going to build a playland park, but it does mean we're going to keep them cool in the 100-degree weather and keep them warm. And so I'm not asking questions because I sat in all of those meetings, and I just need for everybody to understand how hard they worked at keeping it to a minimum, keeping it to bare bones. I know that's a lot of money to ask, but we're here about the kids, and I believe that they took care of our kids.
Thank you. I think Ms. Shelton, right, and Ms. Thompson afterwards.
So SMD2 had two great parents that sat on this committee. They were amazing, and they gave really good feedback to me about what was happening in the meeting. So I feel comfortable with the work that was done. So grateful for the committee. I'm grateful to the staff, Ms. Caldwell and her team. I'm grateful to Mr. Villarreal and Susie for always making the numbers work, regardless of what we do. Appreciate all of that. Full stop. I am uncomfortable with Proposition B. Let me back up. Words matter. We said earlier, and I don't know who said it, we can create a policy that helps the kiddo, the Chromebooks follow the kids. I need us to will create a policy, because for me that's a sticking point with this Proposition B. I get, Ms. Chigi, that they had to say no to a lot of things, and alternative schools were they had to say no to that, right? It's probably $200,000 or something like that. So will becomes important. We have to make sure that those kids, those students, have the same level of access and material that the other students that are in our other school campuses. So can we commit to will versus can.
Mrs. Shelton, we are going to absolutely make certain that students at our alternative school have the exact same type of devices and functionality that every other student in our district is afforded.
Perfect.
That I heard that loud and clear, which is why the only reason you're hearing is we're just not ready to say it yet.
And that's okay. I
But
just heard can, and we were talking about shall
No,
versus
ma'am.
may. And
We shall create it and make certain that whether that device follows the child, what we're trying to do is be good stewards of not just buying a whole bunch of devices that sit over there in the event that we get a whole bunch of kids.
100%.
Do you see?
Yes.
We want to make certain that we are being good stewards to say how many actually need to be at that building and how many can come with kids so that we're not spending $145,000 for just computers to be sitting there.
Right.
That's not good stewards, right?
Yes.
So we're trying to find that balance, and Miss Ramsey and Mr. Jarrett have been working on that, but we will absolutely make certain that our students have the devices and the things that they need over at that facility.
Thank you. I'm still uncomfortable with Proposition B. And the reason I'm uncomfortable with Proposition B is because, Ms. Caldwell, thank you for, and I think it came from you, thank you for the 3 quotes on lease versus own, but I don't have enough data. So it just said option 1, option 2, option 3, but without enough data, did we go directly to Google? Did we go directly to Dell? Like, who did we talk to? What was the conversation and why? Why were the numbers different? I mean, they were about $1 million off, a little less than $1 million off. We're amortizing it over 4 years. Mr. Villarreal is going to advertise whatever we buy over 5 years. Is there not a way to make it work? And this is not, I was told already, the reason we had the workshop on Monday is so we didn't litigate the things that were in here. So I'm just stating for the record that thank you for the information, but it was not enough. It did not give me what I needed to say that I had enough data to make a good decision on this. And so what I'd like to do, Mr. Byer, and I'm not sure if it's possible, is pull Proposition B from this vote, because I can vote on the rest of it, but I'm a no on Proposition B at this point.
What level of information did you need?
So it just said, and I can pull it up. It just said option 1, option. I need to know, who did you talk to? What's the?
Ms. Shelton, may I call on Mr. Jarrett to bring somebody up to talk to you about this?
Sure. Ms. Ramsey, if you can come to the podium, please.
Good evening.
Hi.
Hi. Did you want to repeat your questions one at a time, and I'll try to answer?
Yeah, I got options, 1, 2, and 3 against the 19 million. So each of the options was 20 million-ish, right? Yep. Who's option 1? Who's option 2? What did we ask them? What's included in that? How long is the lease? Will they take it back and upgrade for us? Like, there was no, for me there, I needed more detail to know if it was a good deal. Because if it's $20 million over 4 years, and I saw that there was an interest rate, but they're going to change and upgrade these for us every 3 years, right, as a part of that ongoing, that might be a better deal for me than a $19 million in equipment that's going to be obsolete as soon as I get it, and it's mine now, and so there's nothing I can do except maybe rig it together, right? So I just needed more data to help me know if the $20 million and 4.25% interest was worse than buying it or not, and worth me asking Dr. Micah and the board to consider it, and Mr. Villarreal to consider it an M&O.
Right. So all 3 options were from one vendor. The 3 options were different payment pieces. So the first option was paying a certain amount every single year. They were all lease to own. So there was no buyback or any of that. The difference in the prices were, the first one was 5 years, a flat payment, year 1, year 2, year 3, year 4, year 5, and then you had a buyout of $1 per device after you paid all of those 5 years. The next one was a little bit different interest rate. If you look on the sheet, it was paying 4 years with 4 individual payments within each year. So it was a slower payment each year. So think about it like you're paying a certain amount in a year, but you're only paying, like in February I paid this much.
Right.
In March I paid this much, right? And that was a different interest rate, as you can see on your document. And then the last one was a 4-year. And you'll notice the last one was the most expensive, right? And same, you were paying 1, 2, 3, 4 years, and you were paying outright for each one of those years with the $1 buyback. So the first option was 5 years, which was the lowest option.
That was a full
right? And the last year was 4 years, paying a certain amount of money every single year.
Okay. And why did we only get bids from one vendor?
Time frame. I only was able to get one vendor to respond in that short time frame with that amount of work that they provided for us.
But you contacted several different
vendors,
correct?
yes. Yes,
Okay.
several vendors were contacted, but only one responded in that time frame.
Okay. Okay. That's
Yeah.
very helpful. Thank you.
Any other questions?
I have more, but it'll slow down the meeting, and it's not gonna
Okay.
help me get
Okay.
to. Thank you.
Should I continue standing here?
No,
Or-
please.
Okay.
Please
Just
have a
making
seat.
sure.
Well, I will say, Ms. Shelton, if you have questions, now is the time to ask it. I mean, because honestly, I think we either have to say all or nothing tonight. I don't think it's appropriate to or prudent to save one, and we have, if we have the desire to potentially go after it, we have to call this by a week from tonight, or else we miss the November window. And so, can you turn your mic, please?
They don't have the answers. They're not going to be able to get it in the time that it's required. So it's not. I mean, I'm still in the same position. I appreciate the insight, and that makes complete sense. But if you'd had more than one vendor respond, then we maybe would have had something different. And that's not on them. That's on the vendor not responding. So I can ask more questions, but it's not going to get us any further because there's no additional information that the staff has.
Miss Ramsey, I'm sorry you went and sat down. You might have to come back. As I don't want to misquote you, okay? Because I did speak with you that day in Mr. Jarrett's office because you had reached out to several vendors, correct? One, they never responded to you, but two, and correct me if I'm wrong here, so if I'm wrong, you correct it.
Okay.
Is that many of them didn't bid because they don't lease. They don't like to go into that business.
For iPads in
Correct.
particular.
Right.
Yes. iPads in particular, they don't, but you will have some. Like I said, I reached out to 3, and I heard back from 1. I reached out to those same 3 about iPads, and they were like, we have to get back to you on that.
iPads and Chromebooks, because those are two different vendors. Those are two different platforms.
They are 2 different manufacturers, but they are sold by the same vendors that are out there, like third-party vendors.
Okay.
Yep.
Who did we reach out to?
Our Bloom, CDW, and the last one was Intech.
Did we try? We didn't try Commonwealth.
Did I say that one more time?
Commonwealth Computers.
No, I did not.
Okay.
Are they a vendor of ours? Do you know?
I'm not sure.
Okay.
Ms. Thompson?
It's just my thought that at the end of the day, it's up to the communities to decide whether or not this is the investment that they want to make. And if they don't want to vote for Part B, they don't have to vote for Part B. So at least we give them the opportunity to say that.
I had a question about the bond order. We list in there how it's going to be listed on the, it's in section 5. It says the official ballot shall be prepared in accordance with the provisions of Texas Election Code as amended so as to permit voters to vote for or against. The aforesaid propositions which shall appear on the ballot substantially as follows. My question, then it lists the 5 propositions. 1, 2, 3. Did I have that right? 5 propositions. And this, as I understand, is how it would be worded on the ballot specifically. Is that correct?
That is correct.
So with that, because it also is listed in Spanish on the ballot, do we have to include the Spanish translations in the bond order? Because that would also be officially on the ballot.
There will be another legal
Hold
document.
on.
Say it's
Let
Mr. Lee come up.
Mr. Lee is here
I was about
this
to say,
evening
there will be
in case
another
there were
legal
some
document
questions.
called
So,
a notice, and Mr. Lee can talk about the notice of election, which is different than the order of election.
All right.
Correct. Good evening. Assuming the board approves the order that's before y'all, we will send the ballot off to the translator tomorrow, and they're usually pretty quick on turning that around. So we'll at least have the ballot translated pretty quickly. But also, as Ms. Caldwell said, we'll take this order, because a substantial copy of the order has to be posted on the district's website, public places, polling locations. So we'll put a cover page on it that says notice of election, and then it'll have the ballot language in section 5. We'll have that translated, and we will have that back probably within a week, and we'll provide that to you all. But the order itself does not need to be translated for purposes of approving it tonight, but it will be translated within a week.
Okay. Thank you. I just wanted to make sure that answers the question there. Back to one of the earlier questions about sort of Ms. Cox had about the communications plan. Do we have a general framework of what that could potentially look like should this go forward? I don't necessarily need specific meeting dates at this point, but if we have an idea of where we're going to try to target, what the plan is, I'd like to hear that this evening.
So it's my understanding that there is a plan of dates and meetings that Mr. Jacob Bywaters is handling. As far as the communication plan itself, yes, we have a plan. We would have a bond website where it's a one-stop shop. There would be frequently asked questions there. There would be information. It would link back to the Bexar County page for election dates, a list of projects. We would have deliverables such as one-sheeters, different items, brochures that would break down all of the projects by cluster as well, so that if you're, let's say in the Reagan cluster, you could see everything that the Reagan cluster was getting, and so on, and then district-wide projects as well. If you all do approve tonight, we have a plan ready to go also to communicate to all of our parents, our employees, all of our community members. That would be on our website, social media, email, the usual channels that we take on that as well.
And is all that being handled by your group, or do we have other consultants helping?
It is currently being handled by my communications group and web team. And so we have everything ready to launch if you all do approve that this evening.
And Mr. Villarreal, I was going to ask you about, I know in the bond order it talks about, and maybe there's another Mr. Lee question, but it talks about I think a maximum rate of 5.5%, if I was reading that correctly.
Trying to see.
And I was just curious, more curious what, if in the short term, what are we looking at as far as rates go right now?
I believe this information came from our financial advisors.
Okay.
As what is reasonable to expect.
Right. That's what the market is showing right now, but I mean, that's what we're anticipating. I don't think it's going to be more than that. I mean, it's going to be in the order, so.
Okay. But I mean, I think the order says no more than 5.5%, so I assume that means we'll be finding, I lost my page, so.
Yes, sir.
Ms. Gigi had it. Section
I can't find it.
8, yes.
It's more of an expectation at this time. I mean, the market can change, I guess, by the time we go out to sell, but that's the expectation.
Okay.
It's not, I don't think that's,
Okay.
that's not, it's not set, Matt. I mean, we ran all these numbers through our financial advisor,
Sure.
but because it's listed
And I
on
just
here
want-
doesn't mean
Well, as I want to make
that's
sure
the
I'm not
max. Right.
interpreting it
Correct, yeah,
incorrectly.
it's or as of the date that the order is adopted, so if it's adopted today, current market conditions, we expect that the rate won't go above 5.5%. That's not what we're voting on. Obviously, if the rates go through the roof down the road a year from now, I mean, you don't have to issue, right? I mean, you're calling for an election, the voters, may or may not approve it in November. Assuming they approve it, that doesn't mean that these bonds are issued, right? I mean, we're gonna roll these out over a period of time. The district's financial team and you guys will approve those installments at the right appropriate time. So, if the rates go up to 10%, I mean, you could still issue those bonds at that time if you want. My suspicion is you probably wouldn't, but we're not voting on the 5.5%.
Okay.
It's just at the time this order is adopted.
Okay. I wasn't sure if there was some thing that allowed us to cap it at that, and I thought, well, that's fantastic. I mean, to an
But-
extent, but
If we say a maximum, does that mean
That's-
that we need to stick to them, or should we change this verbiage to say expected? I mean,
yeah, because I think it.
because if we vote on this and it says a maximum of, I just feel like I want us to be transparent
Right.
and do what we say we're gonna do.
Correct. I think the whole paragraph is qualified by at the time that the order was adopted by, the Board of Trustees authorizing the election, the maximum effective interest rate will not exceed the 5.5%. It's pretty standard language to include it. I can go and see if it follows the exact language in the statute, but it's an expectation of current market conditions.
And it does specify current
Yes.
in there, so
Yes.
I understand that. Okay,
So I just wanted to read the sentence for folks who may not be looking at it. The sentence says, based on the bond market conditions on the date of the board's adoption of this order, the maximum interest rate, and then it continues.
correct.
So to your point, it's at the time that you are taking action on the item.
That's what it is.
Not necessarily when we actually, okay.
Possibly not, but and then that's where our financial folks will look at what's the best value at that particular time that we actually issue the bonds for whatever improvements that we're gonna use them for. So if it's Chromebooks, we'll look at whatever that costs. Sorry, I didn't mean to put that.
Yeah,
Sorry.
there you go. There you go.
And also if
Chillers, we'll go back to chillers. If it's chillers, we'll look at what that money is and what that rate is and work our.
Also, whenever y'all issue bonds, typically y'all have done the delegated sale, right? So it's gonna have parameters. You can't exceed this amount.
Right.
Can't exceed this maturity, and you can't exceed this interest rate. And typically, we'll work with the finance team and the financial advisor. We'll put that in there. So,
Okay.
it could be less than this number that's in there at that time.
Mr. Bayer, I have
Yes,
a
ma'am.
question of Ms. Chancellor. Is there an opportunity, and you may already have this in your plan, is there an opportunity for people on that bond, assuming we pass this tonight, on that bond website for people to give feedback and ask questions so that the community has all the methods, right? They can hear what we've already said, but they can ask questions and have responses to their questions as we get ready to ask them to vote.
I'm not sure if we have fleshed out that specific of a plan yet, but I do know that when Dr. Micah would have a plan to go to different organizations and speak about it, we will be collecting feedback so then we can determine what exactly we want to push out on our website to answer those questions. So we will definitely be seeking feedback in that way. And we may have an opportunity for that on our website as well. I just don't want to commit to that right now because
Okay.
I'm not sure what that looks like.
Okay. I would like, if it's possible, Dr. Micah, for us, if it's not the website, there needs to be another way for people to give us feedback beyond a community meeting because they may not make it to the community meeting.
Yes, ma'am. I agree with you. And so, look, Ms. Chancellor and my team have all done some work. They haven't completed the work because at this point we've spent enough man hours and things to not keep moving forward until a decision is made one way or the other. At that point, Ms. Shelton, I agree. There needs to be as many opportunities for people to ask questions and get a response
Right.
to it as possible, and we will work on that moving forward. Again, going out and visiting with people, putting up presentations and things like that on it, but also to ask a very specific question should
Right.
they have it, that we can turn it around in a reasonable amount of time, similar to how we did consolidation,
Yes.
where they were able to ask and we were able to post Absolutely.
Right.
We're going to work on those things.
Okay. And then the last thing I'll say is thank you, Ms. Thompson. You're right. I am but one voice, and while I am clearly uncomfortable with Proposition B, it does rest with the rest of our community. And I know the work that my two parents put into this. I know the work Ms. Chidgey put into this, and I know the work that the staff put into this. And so I appreciate all that, and I don't want to torpedo that hard work. So thank you.
Okay, Ms. Chidgey.
I feel like I know the answer to this, but I'm just going to clarify. You will have a plan to train teachers and staff on what they can and cannot say. I'm assuming.
Yes, ma'am. We actually have already filmed something with Dr. Micah just in the event that you all did decide to pass something this evening. If not, we'll just scrap it and throw it in the trash. But yes, it's Dr. Micah letting all of the employees know really how they need to go about acting, the do's, the don'ts, and it's very informative. And yes, we want to make sure that they're taken care of in that way.
Yes, and Ms. Chidgey, Mr. Bywaters, twice a year we always send out the rights and responsibilities. Is that what it's called? Correct? I can't remember the title of it. It actually comes from me.
Political rights and responsibilities.
Thank you. But what it says is the do's and don'ts during election. So it covers other things as well. That is something. And then again, we also train our principals and folks. So we do as much as we can about all sorts of things with elections, whether it's a bond election or any election in of itself. We're constantly teaching people about what they can and cannot do during that time.
Any other questions? All right, seeing none, do I have a motion to adopt an order calling a bond election to be held by the Northeast Independent School District? So moved. Do I have a second?
Second.
Oh, thank you, Ms. Villarreal. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say nay.
Nay.
Is that Ms. Landry? All right. Motion passes 6-1. Thank you all for the work on that.